coordinated effort, we're able to gather here today and commemorate those who've lost their lives or been injured on the job over the past year. So I have a few remarks prepared. The National Day of Mourning was established in Canada at the urging of the Canadian Labour Congress in 1984 and is now recognized in over 80 countries around the world. With the passing of legislation in Canada, however, it has not fully made the workplace as safe as needs to be. So the purpose of the Day of Mourning is twofold: to remember and honor those who've lost their lives and been injured on the job, and to renew the commitment to improve health and safety in the workplace, prevent further deaths and injuries. So over 1,000 Canadian workers lose their lives each year as a result of accidents or fatalities in the workplace. That would also include fatal diseases due to carcinogenic chemicals and what have you. Many die as a result of preventable incidents. In New Brunswick, there have been 5 fatalities over the past year, and most recently, a worker was stabbed multiple times while driving a bus, narrowly managing to stop the bus for the safety of the passengers. So we would have heard about that recently in the news. So what we have here for numbers, sadly, are that there were 76 workplace accidents reported in 2012. So far this year, there have been 12 reported workplace injuries. So each year for the past 28 years, Labour councils like ours all across Canada have organized events like this. Yet we continue to mourn the loss of our fellow workers as a result of workplace incidents. And why is this? Because workers still die from workplace accidents. So we're fortunate to have with us here today Brother Dave Frank, a Labour historian, who I would like to invite to say a few words on this occasion. Brother?
Well, thank you, Alex. And I guess I just want to say a few words about what a wonderful day it is and what promise there is when we stand on this river. And when we stand on this river, I always think of the stories of people who worked on the river, and we also have to remember the people who lost their lives on the river. And we remember the tradition that lumbermen had of putting markers or memorials, makeshift ones, on the banks of the river to mark the place where a person was lost, to remember hard work, hard times, and the hope of better times. This memorial is in that tradition of paying tribute to people who have been lost at work. There's much to be proud of in the history of this province and in the history of work in this province, but we also have to remember there's a price paid and there has been human damage. There are not a lot of big headlines, but the numbers are and can be rather surprising. In this province, more than 12,000 New Brunswickers reported some form of injury at work in the past year. There were more than 7,500 cases of violations of health and safety regulations in the workplace in this province in the past year. There were more than 300 accident investigations, and there were 11 workplace fatalities, 4 of them in sudden deaths. In June in Kedgwick River, in January at Moncton, in August in Grand Falls, in June last year in Charlotte. And so we have a story here of disasters that were not natural disasters, but ones that we have some responsibility for. We remember, but we can't do that complacently, and I think this week it is appropriate to think about the latest disaster that has been in the headlines. This weekend, they're continuing to remove bodies from the rubble of a badly built high-rise sweatshop in Bangladesh. More than 350 bodies. This is a building, an 8-story building, in which more than 3,000 people worked. Cracks appeared in the walls on Tuesday. The building collapsed on Wednesday. These are workers who worked for as little as 10 or 12 cents an hour, had no unions, and no rights. When we look at history, we remember these kind of incidents, and we think of examples in North America, such as the Triangle Fire in March of 1911 in New York City, when 146 young immigrant workers, mainly women, died within 20 minutes during a fire in another high-rise sweatshop where the employers had locked the doors so that nobody could leave work. We believe that those kind of stories are part of the legacy of North American workers, and when we struggle for stronger unions, for stronger workplace regulations, we're protecting the legacy of those workers. They say that in New Brunswick we are exporters of jobs. We have to think as well whether we are also exporters of risk and unsafe conditions. And why is it that those workers in that other part of the world do not have the same protections that we do? And so we remember, but not complacently, and we need to renew our dedication to the idea that when people go to work, they will do so with the expectation that they can exercise their right, and your right, to refuse unsafe work and to return home in safety. So we'll renew our dedication to that cause today.
Thank you, brother. I'd like to invite Brother Steve Hayes to come say a few remarks as well with IBEW.
Thanks, brothers, sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody else took most of my fire. But I wrote down some notes here. Last year I didn't take the opportunity to read the notes. However, it was cold here last year. It's a beautiful day today. I'm glad to see so many people come out to honor these fallen soldiers, I call them. You know, when the IBW was formed in 1891, for every 2 line workers that were hired, 1 line worker was killed due to a workplace accident. I was attending a safety conference this year, just recently, last week actually, and I was informed that in Canada today, for every day on the job, there's 3 people killed this year. That means for every 4 people that go to work, 1 of them go home, 3 of them don't. Today we remember and commemorate workers whose lives have been lost, and 2 workers have been injured in the workplace. It's also a day to recommit to the challenge of preventing, reducing, and eliminating workplace deaths and injuries. Observing this day will strengthen the resolve to establish safe working conditions in the workplace for all of us. Today is as much a day to remember those fallen and the toll it has taken on co-workers and families and friends. As it is a call to protect the living. Though each of us know the importance of working safely, this day of mourning serves as a key reminder of why this is so important. Therefore, we must breathe new life into efforts to aim at securing a safer and healthier workplace. Remember this, safety rules are written in blood. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, brother. At this time, I'd like to invite Brother Dominic Hardy, leader of the NDP here in New Brunswick, to say a few words.
Just building on the comments that have already been made, over the last 100 years, we've made huge strides. That work is so much safer now than it's ever been. And that's partly because we live in a democracy where working people can say, we're going to insist that we be treated fairly, that we're going to demand that we have the right to say we're not going to work when we're put at risk. But every day, in part because there are millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world desperately trying to find a job that'll pay them a few cents, enough to put food on the table. People come back here and say, well, if you're not willing to work at those same low standards, not willing to work for those same low wages, then maybe you're going to lose your job. We've seen that time after time here in New Brunswick. So I think the point that's already been said here, that we have got to reach out, and at the same time as we defend the standards that people have fought and died for here. So that we have here the widow of someone who lost her husband decades ago now. So this is not a problem that's abstract and theoretical. People talk about labor standards. It all sounds very bureaucratic. This is about people putting their lives on the line. About fathers, mothers, wives, sons not coming home from work. About holes opened up in people's lives. About changes that can never be fixed. So our responsibility is to take this small group of people and next year go out and try and bring more people to events like this, and to make sure that the spirit of this day of mourning is carried throughout the year so that we can continue to push for the real and often not exciting changes, the small changes to a clause here, a paragraph there in our labor legislation, to make sure that people can work a safer day on the job, to make sure they go home to their families, to make sure that we can keep this province a place that attracts people who want to build a better life for themselves and their families, as well as offering that to those of us who've always been here. So thanks again for all of you for coming out here today, and a special word to the firefighters who put their lives on the line each and every day for all of us, and for the sacrifices achieved here many decades ago, but with too many families are still having to repeat today and going forward. So it's in their memory, and to make sure that we have fewer and fewer people in that position every year. Let's hold that in our hearts today. Thank you very much.